Good afternoon, and welcome to Expose Yourself to Art, a show that looks at the creative process by inviting artists to join us in a chat about their life and their work. My name is David Schrader, and with me sharing the host chair is, as always, is Linda Scheller. Let's see if we can bring her in here. There she is. Hello.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad you could join us again. I know you've been away just being an actress for the
Yeah,
last
well,
That's
I'm going to get to do that again this next weekend.
are you? Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Well, anyway, glad to have you back
thank you.
to be sharing this with you. So, tell us a little bit about our guest today, Richard Gomez.
Gladly. Richard Gomez is a Chicano artist and professor with a focus on community-engaged public art. Gomez received his BA from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and his MFA from the Academy of Art University, San Francisco. In 2006, he spent the summer in Paris studying at the Atelier du Carrousel Les Arts Décoratifs. Gomez has been teaching a wide range of art classes through the Global Art Studies Program, GASP, at UC Merced since 2010. So pleased to be able to talk to him today.
Let's bring him aboard here. Hello. There you
Hello,
go.
everyone.
Put you in the main seat here. So, wow, from Turlock to Paris and back.
Yes.
There you go. It's quite a journey.
Mhm.
So, yeah, why don't you start us on this journey? Tell us about where you came from and how you got into art, and we'll take it from there.
Great. All right. Well, hello, David. Hello, Linda. Thank you all for the opportunity for us to kind of join this digital space, and thank you for having me on.
Sure, great.
I am from the Central Valley, specifically Turlock. I did go to Modesto Junior College, and in some of our pre-chats, I was talking about some of the legends that I studied with there, Mr. Riley, Dan Peterson, and Richard Serros. Originally, I was a business major because somebody told me, if you want to make money, study
Yes,
business.
yes.
And
I
so
think
I was
I
taking
was,
these business
I
classes.
started something like that. I started in engineering.
Okay.
You have to make a living, and art just wasn't at the forefront. So anyway, sorry to interrupt. Uh,
So I'm in my business class and I'm like literally falling asleep. And I would take an art class just to kind of give me some balance because I always had this interest in the art. And eventually my art classes became to be the bulk of my schedule. And then I met this individual, and he was originally from San Jose, and he was this artist. Artist was his full identity, and I never really met someone like that before. His name was Rick Navarez,
uh-huh.
and this guy just kind of brought me under his wing, so to speak, and opened up this world of being an artist. Because I mean, growing up in the Central Valley, what exposure do we have to artists? What exposure do we have to museums and galleries? There's not much here. I would say that some of my biggest, my only introduction to art was this magazine that would make a monthly rotation, and that was the Lowrider Arte magazine,
Really?
the Lowrider Arte magazine. And in those pages, not only were the cars, illustrated with wonderful artwork on the paint job, but in the back of the magazine, there was always some drawings, and those were my earliest influences.
So, were you interested in art when you were young? I mean, did you in grade school, or how early did you recognize this part of yourself?
I can remember this specific story in fourth grade where we were told to do a drawing. And I don't remember the reasons why, but I went to the library, the Turlock Library, and I got some books and I found some images that I liked. And I looked at the image and I drew it. And I showed up to class the next day. And the teacher told us to take our drawings out. I took my drawing out and students were looking to see what I did. And they began to kind of gather around my desk. The teacher looked at it and was like, "You're supposed to draw something, not trace something." And
Oh, yeah.
I go, "Yeah." And I go, "Well,
You did draw it.
I did draw it."
Yes.
"No, you copied it." And
Yeah.
and just like difference between copying and tracing, and it just I don't know, instead of praising the work, she began to kind of knock it down. And I didn't really, I was young, man. I didn't really know much, and it just left me a little confused, at that point. But
I'm so sorry that happened. That's terrible.
Yeah. It didn't change my life, you know what I'm saying? But it left me a little confused. But I always knew that I could draw. I guess I had a good eye early on. I noticed that with my son too. He could look at something and he could draw it pretty accurately.
Yeah. Well, that reflects something from my early life too, because I could draw, but other people didn't say what they said to you, to me. I said it to myself. I said, "Oh, yeah," because other people would say, "Oh, you can draw," and I say, "No, this is just copy art. This isn't coming from inside me or something. I'm just copying what's out there."
Yeah.
So I think we've all struggled with something like that. It's interesting. Anyway, took you off your course. So let's get back to you. I'd like to hear something about the encounters you had with some of your, what would you call them, mentors, teachers at MJC? Yeah. You mentioned,
Mr. Riley.
Yeah.
Mr. Riley, he was a traditionalist abstract painter. And he grew up, or he was brought in an era when abstract expressionism was the dominant form of painting, of American painting. It really defined what American painting was. And I remember he didn't have any real kind of reference he would look at. He just would paint these flowers, right? If people are familiar with his work. He did some figurative work as well. I never really saw those in person or in class. He wouldn't paint those, but he would just do these these abstract still lifes of flowers in a vase. And he would just work really loose and just put all this broken color everywhere and just go for it. And then Mr. Saros was a little bit more traditional, but he didn't have the academic training that I kind of took on later. But he was very good, very surreal as well. And Dan Peterson, he was a classical watercolorist. Yeah. His work is levels up. But he liked his rocks, right? His rocks and his little streams and all of that.
Yeah.
So I learned from all of those, and Mr. Peterson did teach some drawing classes, and I remember his perspective assignments. They were really intense. I teach perspective now at UC Merced, and I do not get as intense as he did in junior college at that time. I mean, he really took it really deep. So props to him. After Modesto Junior College, I went to Santa Barbara, and Santa Barbara was a very it's very conceptual art program there. If you present it as art, it's art. Period. So
whatever shape or form or
I mean, this is conceptualism. So the work of Katie Nolan, the work of Barbara Kruger. Those were big during that time, and where installation art was also really kind of talked about a lot. You could just put a pile of garbage somewhere in a corner and call it something. And, I just really wasn't able to vibe much with that. I was a painter and I really wanted to paint the best that I could. And so when I finished with my undergrad at Santa Barbara, I felt like I could really explain my art well, but not necessarily feel like I was actually producing anything of real substance. But I could BS about it. That's how I think that's how I could sum up my arts education there.
Yeah.
But there were some good professors there, and when you go to a university, especially a big university like that, you learn what you're there to study, but that's just one thing of all of these other wonderful benefits of getting educated, right? And going to a university where you meet so many different people and all these ideas, and you're in these groups, and that's what the university really adds. We had walkouts, we had protests, and all this wonderful things that I got exposed to while I was there at UC Santa Barbara. I then graduated there, and then I went to grad school in San Francisco, where I finally met my Yoda, if you will, my master. I took this guy, his name was Mark Tennant, and when I saw him paint, when I saw this guy paint, I looked at his painting and I said, that's what I want to do. That's how I want to paint. I was hooked.
Wow.
It just summed me.
That's fortunate to find someone that can provide that for you.
And that's who I followed to Paris. I followed Mark Tennant to Paris, and that's what took me from the Central Valley to San Francisco, from San Francisco to Paris. Mark Tennant.
What was that like for you in Paris?
Yeah, so we were there for the summer, and the main thing to do was to study from the masters. So we were inside the Louvre, and we picked a painting beforehand, and I had to get permission from the embassy and all this other things for this to be green lighted, and permission to paint. And so I'm in the Louvre painting from the original work, and this is old school academic training. Yeah. This is what Picasso did when he was studying at the Royal Academy in Madrid. All of those greats, Rembrandt, they all studied from the masters, whoever their masters were at that time, and so that's the type of training that I was getting. And since then, I've also copied in the Museo del Prado in Madrid. And I've copied also in San Francisco at the, not at the De Young, at the other place, the Legion of Honor. They allow copying there.
So what do you think about that approach to?
Yeah.
What do you think about, I've heard lots of different opinions about that.
It's what it is having a one-on-one intimate conversation with the master himself, and me try to get inside their head and study and converse on how they chose to tackle certain things, like maybe the little form shadow on the nose and the highlight, and how they were able to paint the lips and all of this, and with value and color, and all of the technical things, because we're in front of those things and we study every little thing about it, and I could see it, and it's right there in front of me. It's real, as opposed to looking at an image on a screen or a replication on a book. Um, and then I'm in this space, like when I was in Spain in Madrid copying at the Prado Museum, I'm like right next to Goya's, they're all around me. And then here I am trying to copy the master that I was copying. Like I'm supposed to, like I belong there or something, and it's this mind game too. Plus thousands of people are coming through and, looking over your shoulder and, saying, who knows what they're saying, but
Yeah.
there I am, doing it. So it's a real sink or swim kind of scenario. And as artists, I think it's really important that we do that we really put ourselves out there to just utterly fail publicly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So do you see that as being in contrast to some degree with, you mentioned the abstract, like with somebody like Jackson Pollock, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, so that's what makes abstract kind of revolutionary in a sense of, instead of following the masters, you uh, find your creative process through some other means.
So Jackson Pollock is really interesting. Again, he became the poster child for American art around the 1940s, because before that, American art really wasn't taken very serious, right? Everything was in Paris. Paris was the epicenter of everything fine art and culture. In dance and literature, even our own American greats in literature, right? Hemingway and Fitzgerald, they all went to Paris and wrote over there, and that's their most famous works, are based over there usually. And so Jackson Pollock, I don't believe he studied in Paris, but he did study under the Mexican master Siqueiros, who had Siqueiros and Diego Rivera and Orozco. They were the three greats, right? And they did a lot of work here in the United States. American art, I mean, if we look at American art in the greater American context of the continent of America, it was Mexico that was at the forefront. And the Mexican art from the 1920s on, 1930s especially, really dominated the American landscape and influencing a lot of artists from the United States, including Jackson Pollock. So in the mid 1920s, Siqueiros was teaching this workshop in New York, and Jackson Pollock and his brother both took that workshop. And in that workshop, Siqueiros was already known for dripping paint. He was already known for experimenting with different types of paints. He had a technique called the accidental painting technique, where he would drip paint, and based on the different viscosity of the paints, it would kind of leave different levels and mixing with each other and all of that. But he wouldn't just leave it like that. That would be background that he would paint on top of, and he would use it for effects to give like texture to skin or to clothes or accessories, what have you. But Pollock learned all of that, and it wasn't until like over 10 years later that Pollock finally did that drip painting and left it alone. And that's what was so revolutionary, I guess. And he fit, he really fit the bill for what I think the United States art scene was looking for at that time, this token artist to really kind of be the symbol of American art, and the rest is history.
Wow. Interesting.
Very.
In a couple ways. Do you teach? Is this part of how you teach? Do you actually, or do you just focus on the studio part?
Well, I teach a number of different classes at UC Merced: painting classes, drawing classes, lower division, upper division. But then I teach some other classes that are some upper division classes where art is not so much about decoration, but about purpose, right? And then that's when we get into the Mexican masters and all of that, because their work was all about purpose. It, in the words of Orozco, he calls couch art. He calls couch art. I call it couch art. He called it diabetic art. Art that is full of sugar, but zero substance, that was so rich in its sugar that everyone will like it. Just like soda, right? Everybody loves soda. Everybody loves candy, but it doesn't have a lot of nutritional value to it. There's really not much there. And that's what, so he coined the term diabetic art, and he refers to art that really is for decoration and not so much about purpose. Remember, you got to remember the political landscape during this time that these artists were in. This is right before World War II, right after World War I, or during World War I. The Mexican Revolution was also happening during this time. Socialism, communism, those terms were discussed in depth at bars and cafes and all of this. And it wasn't how it is now. They were having these debates openly, passionately, but also with knowledge of history. They all read, all of the great thinkers and writers, of the time. They just weren't speaking on emotion. They were speaking on education, so they were able to have open debates. But they were communists, man. They were socialist, and their work was for one purpose, for the working class, to take art away from the bourgeoisie, the people that have, because only certain groups would go into those big museums, right? Those big fancy places and buy art. And that wasn't the average working man. And so the mural revolution started because they got that work, and their number one goal was to take it out of those establishments and into the streets, into the public, for it to be for everyone. And that's one of the big things that I follow now, is art should be and needs to be very inclusive. It has to be for everyone. And so I'm a muralist now, and I follow in that tradition of the great masters, including Siqueiros, Orozco, and use art as a tool to kind of advocate for social change.
Well, that makes for a nice segue into you've recently received an award through the California Creative Corps, through the Heartland grant, and to do that kind of work, because they were asking people to use their art to promote certain ideas. So I don't know. Where do you stand with all of that? It sounds like it fits in with you in the way you think about and decoration.
Yeah. So again, I follow that tradition. I do, as you mentioned before, Linda, that I do identify as a Chicano artist. And for me, that's really important. I wrote this down so I could say it a little more correctly here. I do not attempt to revive great painting, but speak in my own voice and with an authority equal to that of my predecessors, Manet, Courbet, Siqueiros, Orozco, and the like. So I very much acknowledge those who came before me, and I'm not trying to outdo them, just continue their legacy and road that they already have paved. So Chicano art is American art. I had a professor one time at UC Santa Barbara that was his really biggest thing to say, because again, it's art and politics is like peanut butter jelly. It's hand in hand. It goes beautifully together. And if we think about the history of Western art, that a lot of us are familiar with. In the words of Diego Rivera, he says, all art is propaganda. And if it's not art. So let's go back and just quickly look at some of the earliest paintings and, you know, in the Western art history. Let's just go say the Renaissance. You know, all of that also was propaganda for the church, you know, and illustrating all of that work and Michelangelo's ceiling, the whole nine. Then we get into, you know, the 18th century, or the ceiling was painted, what, 1408, 1412. The Spanish painters, and the French painting, you know, the work of Napoleon. There's a painting by Jacques-Louis David. He painted the crowning of Napoleon. It's a big painting. It's like, we would call it a mural, but it's on canvas, you know. But it's this giant painting, but it's propaganda, you know. It's really promoting Napoleon. But, you know, we don't kind of get that narrative when we study art history. So it's always been doing that. It's always been kind of promoting someone's agenda. These large epic works. And so what I do, and the term Chicano also, is to continue to kind of continue that narrative and advocate and speak for a group that's often marginalized. And use my voice, since I'm part of that and not someone else telling my story.
Right. So where does this approach fit into? Is there a larger picture of American art right now, or is it mostly pretty stuff, you know, full of sugar? Or where does all this fit together for you?
Yeah, well, I think right now, especially with social media, specifically Instagram, we are exposed to art that's happening all over the world. And we have, you know, especially post-pandemic, I think one thing that the pandemic did more so than anything was have us all realize how small this planet really is and how much we are really connected, right? And now with social media, like, there's artists right now that I follow that are in Palestine, you know, talking about what they're doing and how their work is being affected by what's happening over there. I follow this one artist that's also over there in that part of the world that got taken over by the Taliban. And, you know, in Afghanistan, she's this Afghanistan street artist, and her work's phenomenal, telling her story and how her life's being affected. And so in the United States, you know, I think now it will be really difficult to kind of coin it or label it or pigeonhole it, because there's so many of us now, and we're all coming from different perspectives, and everyone's perspective and backgrounds, I think, is finally being acknowledged, you know, especially the inclusion more of artists of color. For the longest time, the dominant culture dominated the art scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's also what has been a big change. I mean, this is 2023. You know, this is.
My head's jumping all around. So, talking about art in this grander perspective, do you have any thoughts about the latest controversy with AI, artificial intelligence, and its impact on art, and how it fits in or doesn't fit in, or is this the devil come home to roost?
Well, I benefited from AI recently when I did my last project for the Heartland Grant, the mural that I painted in Turlock on First Street. We went into AI and we used AI to create a reference material that we used for the mural. So AI works beautifully for a specific purpose. Is it going to take over? I guess that's always the end question, right? I mean, I think AI inevitably will take us all over. That's what every movie says.
Right.
You know, it seems to be the engineer's goal to create AI to eventually, subdue us. But
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, just wondering where it fits in with the meaning. I'm sorry, Linda, you looked like you were going to say something.
Well, I was just eager to see some images.
Sure, we have some here, and we can let's take a look at some reference points here. So, slide marker.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Where is this?
Yeah, this is not Turlock. This is in Bangladesh. I am part of a nonprofit group called Artolution. It's based in New York. And what they do is that, they bring art to help deal with trauma to these displaced groups. So like, let's just say right now, all of these people that are in Gaza that are forced to flee, right? A lot of them are experiencing all different types of tragedy, whether it be death, murder, starvation, or what have you, medicine. And there's all these humanitarian groups that are there to bring housing, water, shelter, medicine, and all of the necessities of life. But what about the mental health aspect and the trauma? And so that's what we do with art. We go to these communities of misplaced refugees. In this case, this is the Rohingya people, and it's the largest refugee population, largest refugee camps in the world. They fled Myanmar, and their stories that they tell, man, are just horrendous. They don't get enough media attention. A lot of focus went to Ukraine when they had to flee.
Right.
Now, of course, we're being dominated by what's happening in Israel.
Right.
But the Rohingya people, man, they are a noble people, and they have just withstood some incredible discrimination and violence against them, and were forced to move, and they formed camps in Bangladesh, in the neighboring country of Bangladesh. So here we are there, and I was able to bring some art over there and do some teaching, since that's what I do. And we were learning how to do some portraits. I think right here, I'm drawing a landscape that's in front of me, and they haven't seen this before, and
Really?
No, this is jungle, man. This is, they're inside these little shacks. You can see what their structure looks like behind them. We also painted some murals there too. That was one of the main things that we did. This was at a women's shelter or a women's center in Bangladesh, inside the camps. This is hours deep in the jungle. And they have limited resources there for sure. There's no chairs. Everyone's sitting on the floor. It's just, they don't have much. But I'm also being a little American centric too. There was a lot of things that I had to kind of check on my end, because going into a place that I'm not familiar with, a different culture, different religion, a whole different way of living and thinking that I had to kind of open up to, so I was able to make some really good friends with the Muslim people here and get a huge respect and admiration for the Muslim community in this area. And everything I heard about 9/11 and all of that stuff was just like not at all the reality that I experienced here.
Yeah.
What was the organization again that sent you there?
It's Artolution.
Okay.
So like revolution, but art.
Yes.
Oh,
Well, that's great.
Uh-huh.
Do you have plans to go to a new destination in the future, or you shall see?
Yeah, we'll see. The two people who co-lead this organization, Max and Joel, they travel continuously year round and do a lot of these projects. And Artolution actually has a base here in Bangladesh, one in Colombia, one in Uganda, Africa, and another one in I believe in Saudi Arabia, where they visited so many times that they now have collective of artists that live there, that work there, that are part of the nonprofit as well, and continue this work. So.
Oh, that is wonderful. I'm so glad to hear about that.
so what are you aware of the impact of your presence and other artists' presence there? How would you describe the impact?
Yeah, that's a fair question, David. So I could say that their portraits have improved.
Okay.
And they know now a lot about the Western teachings of, this Western idea of art, like chiaroscuro and perspective and proportions. That's mainly what I brought over there, and they have added that now to their repertoire art skills that they use now. So as artists, they feel way more, skilled, way more validated.
I was just wondering if there was an emotional component to that too. I worked as an art therapist for a number of years, and to see the impact of art on people's emotional lives.
Okay.
And there's a show that we have at the Mislin Gallery right now from the art therapy program that's focused on cancer survivors and caregivers. And so I guess my question, where my question came from is, did you see any of that kind of impact on bringing art to this group of people?
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, we get a smile on their face, and in the Women's Center, we worked with them as well. And this group here is part of the Artolution artist team. That is the Rohingya, and they have their own page too on Instagram too.
Okay.
But David, I do these projects all over, not just abroad, but like I've done projects in Livingston where we engage the local community and do these mural projects. And what these mural projects aim to do is create landmarks in their community, tell their story, and have them kind of speak in their own voice about who they are and how they wish to be represented. I've done this in Planada, I've done it in LA, and I'll be doing this as well as part of the second part of the Heartland Grant in Turlock, in collaboration with Roselawn Continuation School. So a group of youth that are in that school, we will be partnering with, and we'll be working with them to do workshops to create this exact same thing that I did over here in Bangladesh, but in Turlock.
Yeah, you're giving them a voice or helping them with their voice.
Yeah, for sure.
Would that be correct or close? Okay. Well, let's see what else we have here. Oh, did I jump around?
Yeah,
No.
that works.
That works. Okay. So what do we have here? 2008. This is
2008. So this is just a piece called The Apple. This is all brush, and this is very traditional academic painting here, very limited palette. And this is a statue that my wife has that she inherited from her mom. And that little child on the bottom, that's my daughter. She's my oldest. And at this time, I believe she was probably a couple years old, maybe 2, 3, 4 years old or something. But the idea behind this piece was, I myself, I'm not Catholic, but my wife very much is, and we chose to I've adopted that to kind of help bring some of that, religious morality to my child's upbringing. And she looks at that apple. We kind of know the symbol of the apple, right? With the Adam and Eve and the choices that we make. And so the purpose of this piece for me was putting that apple there. My daughter's there looking at it. And as she makes her choices in life, hopefully the upbringing that we provided for her and the choices that my wife and I provided for her are there to guide her make those decisions when she's out there in the real world, which she is right now. She's in Berkeley. She's a sophomore there at Berkeley at Cal. And so she's living alone and living her life. She's in a couple days, she's going to turn 19. And so this is, we have all the faith in the world that she is going to continue to do well and prosper and make those good decisions. She's done it so far,
Great. So is she going to take a bite of the apple or?
I at least pick it up, right? I mean, at least play with it.
Yeah, at least. Okay. This one is intriguing. Okay.
So you tell me, David and Linda, I would be curious to hear your thoughts on this first before I discuss them.
Linda, go first.
Okay, well, I'm surprised that the deer head is growing from the man's hips. I would expect it to come from his shoulders, but it's almost like a reverse centaur in a sense. And this figure in black, which I don't know if that's a helmet, and he's holding a chain, but it certainly looks very ominous and, dare I say, evil. And the man, I presume it's a man kneeling in front of him. It's fearsome. It makes me think of when you were speaking about Mexico, and I have some Huichol paintings in my house, and the vanada, and just the sacred deer. It's almost as if it's falling away.
Mm.
And then I don't know about the red and those spiky things behind him. That's
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing, Linda. That's good. David.
Oh my gosh. Oh, looks like one of these missionary creatures from a religious robed. And I see the man emerging from the animal and bowing. I don't know. I don't like it. I mean, I like the picture, but I don't like the feeling it gives me of this man, in a sense, bowing down, becoming subservient to this religious order, as opposed to staying with his natural state.
Yeah, it bespeaks indoctrination, colonization.
And
yeah, well, that's
anyway, that's what it does for me. So
yeah, wow. You two are really well. Again, David, Linda, I appreciate you sharing that. We myself as a Chicano am always dealing with identity, race and identity in the United States. and a lot of that is remnants from the colonization of California, not California and the Americas, really.
Right.
And the lingering effects of colonization, and nothing, they say that the conquest was done with two things, right? The sword and the Bible.
Yeah, well,
And the cross. That's why you see some of the paintings. There's this painting by Orozco, and you have this priest with the cross, and he is about to just drive it down the back of a native. And it's a powerful thing. And here I have, a father or a padre, right, from one of the California missions. And you have this native person that's kneeling there, and it could be as you say, Linda, maybe his nativeness, his identity as indigenous, being ripped away or rejecting, and kind of breaking free. And so this has been just an ongoing theme in my work. And ongoing theme in our country. I mean, we just had, the summer of 2020, my gosh, with everything that's going on and continues to go on. And so for me, that's what's happening here.
Okay. So we're kind of seeing it the same.
Yeah, no, that's good. You all picked up on it really well. And so it's validation on my end that, it kind of reads. And an interesting point here, I started this painting probably in 2015, 2016, and then it just sat. It sat for a long, long, long time, unfinished. I would love to show you a picture of what it looked like. Oh my gosh. Originally, I changed it so much, and in 2015, I started to also experiment with spray paint, and that the figure that's kneeling and the deer head is entirely 100% spray paint.
Wow.
And the background, and all the background spray paint too, and foreground, and mountains.
Yeah. That's an art form that I marvel at. I don't know how people are able to do it and create these incredibly detailed pictures with spray paint. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, here, are you ready to move on, or you're going to show me something, or?
Yeah, and if you zoom in on that eye of the deer head, you could see it kind of crying a little bit, but that's just the spray paint dripping too.
Oh, okay. I don't think I can. Well, let's see. Can I zoom in anymore here? Whoops. Let's go back up here. Come on. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. You can see how now it looks like spray paint, right?
Yes, now it looks like spray paint. Yes.
Yeah, this is deeply moving.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Oops. What's going on here? Come on. Nope.
By the way, this painting right now, the painting with the deer, I call it Returning to Mother. And it is currently in an exhibition in North Carolina.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's where this is right now.
Okay.
Richard, do you have a website that viewers can check out?
Yeah, I have an Instagram page. I don't know, David, were you able to download that pic?
Just
at the end.
Sure, I don't.
I can share it at the end.
Okay. So let's move on to this.
Okay, so this is a piece that I call Agency. And this is 100% spray paint. I used my daughter, my second daughter, as a model and reference for this piece. And it is just, you know, women giving voice to women. You know, you can see that she's kind of a darker skinned person blowing the concha, which we call the concha, the conch shell.
Shell, yeah.
Is a really it's a ceremonial practice, and you know, in my indigenous roots, and it's a call, it's an offering, it's a acknowledgement. And here I have this woman kind of blowing this thing, kind of like putting her voice out there, and she's in charge, and she's the one that's going to kind of dictate her own future.
Now,
Yes.
on her hand, that seems to be a human heart.
Yes.
And are there
So
figures inside of it?
There's a little portrait that's in there with again speech, with indigenous speech that's coming out. Yeah. And that kind of it's been my logo for a while.
What about the overlay on the fingers?
Yeah, so it doesn't really say anything, but it looks like it does, right?
Yeah. Okay.
It looks like it's graffiti. And so here I am just saying, look, this is spray paint. It's stigmatized for you to think it's supposed to look like this, but the whole thing is spray paint, you know? And so I'm just kind of playing with that idea too, that stigma that comes with spray paint, especially here in the Central Valley. And here locally in Merced, we're trying to get the city budget of Merced County to the city of Merced to lessen the budget on the graffiti abatement program, because that person is filthy rich, multimillionaire. The more that the graffiti abatement can villainize graffiti and demonize it, the more money that they make. And so our solution is, hey, give me the top 10 locations that constantly get hit with graffiti and vandalism. Let us do some public art there and see how much money the city of Merced will save. Just give us a fraction of that budget. Let us reinterpret those funds in a more community-based way and watch how things change. Not, oh, there's more gang stuff that's covered up with the most grotesque, unmatched blotches of puke, beige, and green, you know, which doesn't add any aesthetic to the walls whatsoever.
Right. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? There it is. So this picture, this is from a mural you've been working on or you've completed in Turlock. Is that correct?
Correct. This is our newest project in Turlock, and this was part of our Heartland grant. And this is a piece on First Street. We partnered with La Primera. That's the restaurant that's also on First Street. They big part of this project. There's also Cafe Rome, which is part of that same location. This is also in collaboration with the Carnegie Art Center. And I have a team of artists that helped me on this. Thor, Thore. He's a pretty well-known tattoo artist in the area, and UC Merced, former UC Merced student. And Perla Cerna, she's down there on the bottom, and she's also part of the team. And she herself also went to San Francisco to study arts therapy, and she is based in Modesto. And we did this piece here, and we call it Chicano Downtown.
Okay. So that brings me to the question of the Heartland Grant asks people to create art that fulfilled one of, what would I say, 4 themes, so to speak. Is there a theme to this? I mean, the themes were very, I don't know, definitive in some ways. I mean, it's like getting vaccinated, preserving water, and there was this vague category of what doing community good, pulling the community together. Is there a theme to this? Your work?
Yeah, there's always a theme. In this case, the theme is culture
Okay.
and giving culture to a particular group of Turlock that doesn't that I think has been part of Turlock for a long time, that just doesn't really have a lot of voices that advocate for them.
Uh-huh.
And for me, also, this project was really personal because the wall that I'm painting on was formerly this business called Pablo's. It was Pablo's Bar, and Pablo was my great grandfather. And this building right here was in my family since the 1940s, and it was a restaurant and bar, and you could go back and forth. There was a wall. There's a door that leads inside the restaurant, and you could eat your food and then walk into the bar and have a drink. My family sold it in the 1980s. And this place, this street, and this part of downtown Turlock has been fairly derelict since. You know, at one time it was thriving, like you couldn't even find a place to park. And then from the 80s and 90s and 2000s to now, it just was a place that just was almost an eyesore in Turlock downtown. And so we're trying to revitalize it. And you know, beautification wasn't necessarily a part of the Heartland Grant, but it's definitely a result of these murals.
Yeah.
Plus adding some cultural pride as well to that Westside community that lives there, that sees this, that's part of it.
Uh-huh. Well, I can see we're closing in on the end of the hour, and I want to get to this one because this is timely, and it's also intriguing. So.
Yes. So this is myself with La Catrina Azteca. That's what we call her. La Catrina, of course, is this image in Mexican lore that is this very gaudy, beautiful woman of substance and of money. But she's dead. And it's kind of like this ultimate equalizer where we have the super rich and the super poor. And no matter how much those rich people try, they're not going to escape death. And just like the poor person, they will die. It's the ultimate equalizer, right? We both know that we will die. And so even though they think they're better than us in this world, their world will end just like ours will, and will be equal. So this project here was what we did at the MAC, the Merced Multicultural Arts Center, under the helm of Colton Dennis, who does really well over there.
Yes.
And this year will be our 23rd annual Day of the Dead celebration. We've been doing this for a while. And I was able to kind of jump on the committee, on the Day of the Dead committee here, to kind of lead the project. I was able to get things funded through grants from the UC Merced. And, you know, with money comes more possibilities, bigger ideas. Well, we can do this, we could do that. And this is one of the sculptures that we created, myself in collaboration with Charles Perez. And him and I both did this. We built it. We hired other local artists. There's another local artist by the name of Janine. She created all of the jewelry, the earrings, the bracelets, the necklace piece. And we hired another artist. Her name is Lulu Gomez. And she is originally from LA. She was at UC Merced, and she stayed in Merced after graduating UC Merced and did not go back to LA, chose to stay in the Central Valley. And she works there at the MAC. And she's this fabulous artist. And we were able to have her design the costume, and she sewed it all together and even made the headdress as well. So a lot of hands went into this project here. And you can see, I believe she's over close to 16 feet tall, maybe 18 feet tall with the headdress.
Yes. It's impressive.
And we really wanted this stance where she's really leaning forward. And, you know, this is from my figure drawing kind of background here, where I really wanted some attitude, you know, so she's really popping that hip out. And she's actually really voluptuous too, by the way, for a skeleton.
Where can we see this? I mean, this is the best.
Right now, she is in my studio in pieces, waiting for her to make an appearance somewhere. But we need space, as you can see. We need the right venue. We've put her up here at the MAC a couple years, and then she traveled to Fresno and made an appearance in Fresno at the Arte Americas venue in Fresno. Other than that, she's looking for a home.
Well, you'll have to tell me when she finds one. So,
Oh, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much, Richard.
yes, I could sit and we could continue this conversation for a long time.
I'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
We're just scratching the surface, David.
I know.
That's what it feels like. Yeah. Well, congratulations to you. I'm so glad you got this grant, and I can't wait to see the results. It's coming along beautifully, and I so appreciate you telling us about it and all of your work and your teaching. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Really appreciate your words.
Yes, very much. And we will continue a conversation.
Okay, so real quick, the second part of the Heartland Grant will lead to a solo show at the Carnegie in Sherlock, and you should expect that to happen in the beginning of next year.
Oh, great.
So we should probably say goodbye to now and leave